Good evening, and welcome. Tonight we're diving deep into a story that has the potential to reshape the very fabric of our nation's economy. President Trump's declaration of a national emergency over trade practices. This is a story with global implications, one that's sending shockwaves through the markets and raising anxieties in households across America. We'll break down the president's reasoning, examine the sweeping tariffs he's imposed on goods from around the world, and analyze the potential fallout. From the factory floors of the industrial heartland to the trading desks of Wall Street, the impact of these decisions is being felt far and wide. We'll hear from economists sounding the alarm about a potential recession, retirees worried about their nest eggs, and everyday Americans bracing for the possibility of higher prices and economic uncertainty. This is a story you can't afford to ignore, so stay with us. President Trump, standing behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office, didn't mince words. With a stroke of his pen, he declared a national emergency, citing predatory trade practices by foreign nations. These practices, he argued, threaten America's economic security and cost American jobs. The declaration ignited controversy, with critics calling it a power grab, and supporters praising his tough stance. Critics decried it as an attempt to circumvent Congress. Supporters cheered, praising the president for taking a tough stance against unfair trade deals. This declaration grants the president sweeping powers to impose tariffs and restrict imports. It's a clear escalation in the global trade conflict, especially with China. The president's declaration of a national emergency was just the opening salvo. The real shockwave came with the announcement of sweeping new tariffs on a vast array of imported goods. From washing machines to solar panels, steel to aluminum, the administration targeted products from across the globe. The tariffs, ranging from 10 to 25%, sent shockwaves through the global economy. China, the European Union, Canada, Mexico, all found themselves in the crosshairs of the Trump administration's trade offensive. The message was clear: the era of what the president called unfair trade practices was over. The administration argued that these tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs and industries. They pointed to China in particular, accusing Beijing of intellectual property theft and currency manipulation. But the tariffs were met with swift and fierce condemnation from American businesses and trade groups. They argued that the tariffs would raise prices for consumers and disrupt supply chains. The tariffs also drew immediate retaliation from trading partners. China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico all announced retaliatory tariffs on billions of dollars worth of American goods. The world watched with bated breath as the trade war escalated, threatening to unravel decades of globalization. The stakes were high and the outcome uncertain. But one thing was clear: the global trading system was being rewritten in real time. The initial reaction from the financial markets was swift and brutal. As news of the tariffs spread, stock markets around the world plunged into a sea of red. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, a bellwether for the American economy, plummeted over 1,000 points in a matter of days, wiping out trillions of dollars in market value. The bloodbath on Wall Street reflected the deep anxiety gripping investors. The tariffs, they feared, would ignite a full-blown trade war, disrupting global supply chains, driving up prices, and undermining economic growth. The uncertainty was palpable, as businesses and consumers alike braced for the unknown. The sell-off was not limited to stocks. Bond yields, a key indicator of investor sentiment, also tumbled as investors sought refuge in safe haven assets like U.S. Treasury bonds. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note, a benchmark for borrowing costs, fell to its lowest level in over a year, signaling growing fears of an economic slowdown. The volatility in the markets reflected a fundamental shift in the global economic landscape. The rules-based trading system that had underpinned decades of global prosperity was under attack, and the consequences were anyone's guess. As the trade war escalated, economists began to sound the alarm, warning that the tariffs could tip the United States economy into a recession. The tariffs, they argued, would act as a drag on economic growth, raising prices for businesses and consumers, and undermining business investment. The risks were particularly acute for industries heavily reliant on global supply chains, such as manufacturing and agriculture. The tariffs would disrupt these chains, forcing businesses to find new suppliers, renegotiate contracts, and absorb higher costs. all of which would weigh on economic activity. Moreover, the tariffs could trigger a vicious cycle of retaliation, with other countries imposing tariffs on United States goods in response. This would further disrupt trade, harm businesses, and raise prices for consumers, exacerbating the economic damage. While the Trump administration dismissed these warnings as fake news, the risks were real. The tariffs represented a significant gamble with the United States economy, one that could have far-reaching consequences. For retirees living on fixed incomes, the market turmoil triggered by the trade war was particularly concerning. Many retirees rely on investment income to supplement their Social Security benefits, and the sharp decline in stock prices threatened to erode their retirement savings. The tariffs also raised the specter of inflation, as businesses passed on their higher costs to consumers in the form of higher prices. This would further erode the purchasing power of retirees' fixed incomes, making it more difficult to afford basic necessities. The uncertainty surrounding the trade war only added to retirees' anxieties. With no clear end in sight, many worried that the market volatility could persist, further eroding their savings and jeopardizing their financial security. The United States trading partners did not stand idly by as the Trump administration erected tariff walls. From Beijing to Brussels, governments around the world denounced the tariffs as protectionist and illegal, vowing to retaliate with tariffs of their own. China, the primary target of the Trump administration's trade offensive, responded with tariffs on billions of dollars worth of American goods, including soybeans, aircraft, and automobiles. The European Union, Canada, and Mexico followed suit, targeting iconic American products like bourbon, motorcycles, and orange juice. The tit-for-tat tariffs threatened to escalate into a full-blown trade war, with potentially devastating consequences for the global economy. A trade war would disrupt global supply chains, raise prices for consumers, and undermine economic growth around the world. Amidst the turmoil of the trade war, a different kind of crisis was unfolding at the Department of Health and Human Services. Thousands of jobs had been slashed, vital programs were on the chopping block, and concerns about the future of public health in America were mounting. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., thrust into the eye of this storm, faced a daunting challenge: restoring order to a department in disarray and reassuring a nation increasingly anxious about the future of healthcare. He acknowledged the missteps, the unintended consequences of budget cuts that had gone too far, severing lifelines for vulnerable Americans who relied on them. With a sense of urgency, Secretary Kennedy moved to reinstate programs that had been mistakenly cut, programs that provided critical services to children, families, and seniors. The reversal, while welcomed, couldn't erase the damage that had been done, the uncertainty that lingered. In a rare display of bipartisanship, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle came together to address a growing concern in healthcare: the often cumbersome process of prior authorization. This bureaucratic hurdle, requiring pre-approval from insurance companies before patients can access certain treatments, had become a source of frustration for both patients and providers. The proposed legislation aimed to streamline the prior authorization process, reducing delays in care, and ensuring that patients receive timely access to the treatments they need. The bipartisan support for the bill reflected a shared recognition of the need to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the healthcare system. On Capitol Hill, the battle lines were drawn over the federal budget, with Senate Republicans unveiling a new blueprint aimed at advancing President Trump's legislative agenda. The plan, spearheaded by Majority Leader John Thune, called for deep cuts to social programs, increased defense spending, and tax cuts for corporations and wealthy individuals. The Republican budget proposal faced stiff opposition from Democrats, who denounced it as a giveaway to the wealthy at the expense of the poor and middle class. The Democrats argued that the budget would exacerbate income inequality, undermine social safety net programs, and increase the deficit. As the trade war and budget battles raged on, a stark reminder of nature's power emerged from the tropics. Meteorologists at Colorado State University issued their annual hurricane season forecast, predicting a busier-than-average season with an increased likelihood of major hurricanes making landfall in the United States. The forecast served as a wake-up call for coastal communities, many of which were still recovering from the devastating hurricanes of previous years. It underscored the importance of preparedness, of having emergency plans in place and being ready to evacuate if necessary. The events of these past weeks have been nothing short of tumultuous, a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our world, and the profound impact that policy decisions made in Washington have on the lives of everyday Americans. We've witnessed the fragility of the global economy, the potential consequences of protectionist trade policies, and the importance of a functioning and compassionate healthcare system. As we navigate these uncertain waters, it's more important than ever to stay informed, to engage in thoughtful dialogue, and to hold leaders accountable for the decisions they make. The future of our nation, our economy, and our planet depends on it. Thank you for joining us tonight.